Hello and welcome to Walker Tea Review. I'm Jason Walker, and we do a couple of things here. One is we taste teas, but then the other part of the video is to also talk about how to prepare the tea. And to paraphrase G.I. Joe, making tea is half the battle. So let's go ahead and get this tea ready to go. Give it a try here, and get some kind of standardized ways to look at teas so that you can compare them fairly head to head. Got out a Guy wine, about 4 ounces volume there. My water's been brought to a boil. Again, I use a very simple method as far as I don't necessarily go for a particular temperature. I've been using this kettle long enough that I can just kind of recognize the general area by sound. Now I've scooped out enough here. My goal is to get enough of this. This is a oolong, and I want enough that I can really cover that cannot see the bottom, say, inch to inch and a half diameter of the bottom surface there, and that looks pretty good. Actually, I do want just a pinch more. That looks good. So let me just kind of squeeze that shut for a second. Add my water. I want to bring enough water so that a little bit will rise above the lid when I put it on. I'm also kind of making sure that each leaf gets covered in water and you don't have a bunch of leaves that are partially dry floating on the top. Let me get this out of the way. Put my lid on, scooping any floating leaves, pushing those more towards the middle, and putting my lid on just like that. Good thing I got this saucer because I got plenty of liquid there rising above the rim of my lid there. But that will cool, and some of that water will recede back down as well. So that'll give that some time to steep, and as that does, then we can talk a little bit about this tea. This is from Sky Tea Company. This is their AmberDragon, where you can find on Sky Tea's website. I think it's sky-tea.com. Yes, that's correct. 2 ounces available for $11. A little bit of background that I was provided when I asked about this tea was that this was an August 2010 harvest time for this particular tea. It comes from Fujian, China, is the area that is source. Fujian is, of course, the province. And yes, that is about all the information that we have available for this tea. So when we look at this tea, we're going to be looking at the three main areas: the dry leaf, the wet leaf, the liquor. And of course, you may be getting some tips or information as well about the steeping process. Now, first off, I'm noticing smelling of this tea, aromas are quite light. I mean, I'm getting mostly a very bland kind of cardboard box type of smell. There is a little bit of a heat toasted note, although it's quite light. You know, like a very faint Cheerios in a cardboard box. That may be a good way to put it. And so in some ways, it reminds me of a very weak Oriental Beauty. It's got a little bit of that kind of toasted, or some of your darker woo-y type teas that have a little bit of that Cheerio type, and then move on, expand into other aromas as well. But this one hasn't developed those other aspects to it. Looking at this leaf, it's not rolled. It is crinkled or wrapped along the middle vein. One of the things I'm noticing, just kind of looking at this leaf itself, is I see at a glance, I see several tips, needles there that are fuzzy, that are kind of a pale silver type of color, white looking even, and I can see that a little bit here in my hand as well. I'm getting some leaf tip pairs or sets here where they're still connected together. I'm getting some darker type ochre, seal brown, grayish brown type leaves as well. Every once in a while I get a little fleck of something that's kind of green with blotches of rust there as well. But the majority is that seal brown. What I find second most often is a little bit of those needles. So needles are usually a welcome sign, a positive note for a tea. I don't necessarily come across a lot of Fujian Wui style teas that have those sets like that in an oolong. So that's something that I noticed about that. Now let's go ahead. I'm going to get ready to pour here, and I'm going to push this away a little bit so that I have a gap there for pouring. Middle finger and thumb are there, going to hold the edges, and my index finger is going to hold the lid down. There we go. Get those last few drops to shake out as well. Okay. Now set that down for just a moment. I'm already picking up the fact that the aromas have gotten stronger, gotten more evident, more prominent, and have changed positively. So let's go ahead and give this wet leaf a smell. One more time. I got the first thing that really hit me was the kind of a beany type smell. A bean of like a field pea type. It was often something similar to a black-eyed pea, bean pea-ish, October beans. Some of those you put them in a pot, you stewed them for a while. There's some you may have thrown in just a little bit of ham, so there's a little bit of a salty component there. A little bit of a meaty aspect, and that's somewhat coming out here as well. Combined with that, I mean, you do get a little bit of a kind of earthy, woody type note, and it's a very, this is like a freshly cut wood. There's a little bit of like a pine, or more so like a sweet gum tree type of wood, maybe a little bit oaky type. There's something of fresh, kind of a lumber type smell coming out there. Okay. Looking at these leaves, let me go ahead and get these little pieces that stuck. Pull out a few leaves here. Okay, here's one. It's not in pristine condition. I mean, it does have. So it was a leaf of pretty good size. You can still see the jagged edges. What I'm noticing though is you've got a large portion of the leaf. Say this way, if my hand is the leaf here, you've got a large portion that is kind of a rust brown, and then you've got some blotches that still have a bit of a green note to them, which indicates a little bit of how the oxidation took place. It took place over a lot of the leaf, but not all of the leaf. Again, another leaf that is greener with blotches of oxidation, rust color here and there on the leaf. Okay, let's set that one there as well. And now I did note sets when I was looking at the dry leaves, so I do want to try to look for and pull out a representative of here we go, a needle and a very young leaf. Again, the leaf is blotchy with the green and the rust colors there. So most of these leaves are fairly tender. Most of the leaves are not fully intact. They are portions or ragged, rough, jagged type leaves. The ones that are more intact are a little bit thicker, and that kind of takes care of our wet leaf. We can move on, talk more about the, so that was the wet leaf. Of course, now we're talking about the liquor. So let's go ahead and first kind of swirl that around. Still a little bit of the cardboard box, a little bit of an Oriental Beauty type of sweetness there. Light. I'd say that's kind of a very faint light raisin note, combined with that, again, a light sweet gum tree type of chopped wood smell. Darker than honey. This is closer to an amber. It's a deeper rust type of color. A lot of this is coming off or across to me as close to Oriental Beauty, Formosa Fancy, that type of process, that type of activity. Although a lot of your Oriental Beauties, Formosa Fancy, involve two-leaf and a bud sets, which are not the dominant component in this tea. The one, I would say I'm a fan of there is a light syrupy aspect to this. It does have a kind of a coating to it. It comes off as fairly sweet on the tongue and the mouth. The aftertaste still builds on kind of a after you've eaten raisins. There's a bit of that kind of sweetness there, a little bit of that kind of for lack of a term, a tannin or grape skin aspect to it as well. So those are positive notes. So it gives it a kind of a juicy type characterization, reaction in your mouth. Not a lot of astringency though. Very low on the bitterness aspect. Aftertaste, again, still carries on. Let me give it another shot, see what happens as it's cooled a little bit now. Okay, so that texture, the feel of a kind of a texture in your mouth drops off relatively quickly. The aftertaste carries on. The sweetness stays with you, and so in that sense, it has some, and the aftertaste has some black tea type associations. There's that, like I said, that grape skin, raisiny aspect to it. So when I look at this tea as a whole, one, I'm generally uncertain as to how to classify or compare this to other teas. AmberDragon doesn't carry a whole lot of associations with other teas in the same, wearing that same hat. So when I look at this tea as a whole, I would probably give this tea an 88. It's got some nice positive notes. The wet leaf looked a little unusual to me. The lower amount of aroma coming off of the dry leaf and the liquor indicates that there could have been more to this tea, depending on when it was harvested or how what happened to it as far as oxidation as well. So come back to Walker Tea Review, where you will find out if this is your cup and a little bit about how to make that cup yours in the way that you prepare it.